Bienvenidos, bienvenue, welcome. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Ari-Son Megaregion Council webinar. My name is Nathan Pryor, Policy and Government Relations Director for the Maricopa Association of Governments. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so your participation in today's event is seamless. There will be interpretation services available both in English and Spanish. We encourage the audience to please see the planet icon displayed on your Zoom options. If you select that icon, you can listen to the simultaneous interpretation services of your choice. We thank the University of Arizona's interpreters, Isabel Fierro and Ron Zalon, for their participation in this binational meeting. We encourage you to share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag Ari-Son 2021 and follow the accounts displayed on your screen. You will have the opportunity to answer a quick survey about your experience during this webinar. We will be providing that link to you shortly. I would like now to introduce the chair of the Maricopa Association of Governments Economic Development Committee, the Honorable Mayor Alexis Hermosillo, City of El Mirage. Mayor Hermosillo has a master's degree in journalism and is currently pursuing her doctoral degree in organizational leadership. She previously worked for the U.S. House of Representatives. She works for a public transportation company in the Maricopa County area. She has also dedicated herself to the empowerment of Latino women and youth, serving on the Hispanic Women's Corporation and the National Council of La Raza. Mayor Hermosillo, thank you for joining us. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Nathan. We are honored that our distinguished guests are here, and together we can celebrate our strong binational ties during this event hosted by the Ari-Son Megaregion Council. The council was created 7 years ago by local elected officials from Arizona and Sonora and is now a premier forum to elevate the voice of local leadership on binational policy matters. Each year we meet to expand our local government connections as well as to identify areas for cross-border collaboration. Thank you for joining us in this effort to connect virtually. As many of you can recall, just last March we gathered on a virtual setting for the first time and listened to a panel of elected officials who shared their best practices facing the economic challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent travel restrictions between our countries. We also heard reports on the effects of the pandemic on Arizona's trade with Sonora and the rest of North America. Since then, our members found new ways to serve their constituents, and our countries launched a gigantic vaccination effort. Today, we gather with renewed optimism to move the Megaregion forward by exchanging ideas on how to continue strengthening our binational relations, improve our shared infrastructure, as well as to celebrate the recent announcement to lift travel restrictions beginning next month. To initiate this exciting discussion, I have the unique honor of introducing the Honorable Christopher Landau, former ambassador to the United States in Mexico. Mr. Landau earned a Juris Doctor degree from Harvard Law School. He clerked for Associate Justices Antonin Scalia and Clarence Thomas at the United States Supreme Court. He practiced at Kirkland and Ellis for more than 25 years and headed the firm's appellate litigation practice. He then served as United States Ambassador to Mexico from 2019 to 2021. During his tenure, he oversaw the diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Mexico during the signing of the United States-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement and led the COVID-19 pandemic measures taken by the embassy, assisting the thousands of American nationals that reside in Mexico. We are honored to have the opportunity to listen to his experience at the forefront of these two historic events. Thank you for being here, Ambassador Landau. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Hermosillo. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank the Ari-Son Megaregion Council for inviting me to speak to you today. And in particular, quisiera saludar a los participantes mexicanos en esta reunión. Creo que si estuviera ahí les abrazaría, pero todavía no podemos hacer eso. Así que reciban de mi parte un saludo muy cordial. Para mí es un gran honor estar con ustedes esta tarde. Ahora voy a hablar en inglés, pero Siempre es un gran placer hablar con mis amigos mexicanos. I have to say, as ambassador, I had the opportunity to visit Sonora, and I visited Hermosillo, I visited Nogales, and we have consulates general in both of those cities, as you may know. Fortunately, I was able to get there before the pandemic started. And while I was in Nogales, I had the chance to meet with some of the alcaldes and presidentes municipales of some of the surrounding towns on the border, including San Luis Rio Colorado, and I believe Sonoita. And we talked about a lot of the issues that face border communities. I think there's obviously so much that links Arizona and Sonora. And one of the things that I resolved to do when I finished my tenure in Mexico was actually get to know Arizona better. And so I spent most of the early part of this year after I left Mexico City in Arizona. Started out in Tucson for a while, got to go down to Nogales, Arizona and visit there, and then spent a number of months in Phoenix as well. And it was a part of the country where I hadn't spent as much time as I would have liked before being ambassador. And I just think there are incredible opportunities for cooperation and progress between Arizona and Mexico generally, but particularly Sonora. My message to you today, hopefully, is one of empowerment. I think that you all can play a critical role in U.S.-Mexican relations generally, and I really urge you to do so. One of the lines that I was quite fond of using when I was ambassador is that, a lot of people think of relations between our countries as really centering around the presidents of the countries and the ambassadors in the capital cities. But I have to say that my impression is that the strength of the U.S.-Mexico relationship is its breadth, and the fact that there are so many connections that go well beyond the presidents and the ambassadors. I mean, presidents and ambassadors come and go, but these kind of connections, I think, keep the relationship stable and strong. And I think nowhere is that more true than in the border areas. And nowhere is the relationship more important than in the border areas. So I just want to say to all of you, I have the title of ambassador, but I really feel very strongly that you are the real ambassadors between our countries, and you are the ones on whom this relationship depends. I remember when President Trump was elected and when President López Obrador was elected, many people predicted that relations between our countries would not go well. But there are just so many links between the countries that I think the truth is it's really almost not possible for presidents and ambassadors to make a fundamental shift in that relationship, just given how strong it is. So my message to you today is please step up to the plate and make your voices heard, both in Mexico City and in Washington. My tenure as ambassador was marked by several remarkable events. I think most notably the final passage of the USMCA agreement, which I think continues to institutionalize the development of the relationship between our countries, and of course the pandemic, which threw a wrench into everything. I think both of those events create opportunities for deepened cooperation, and I think also highlight some of the holes in the current system. So I would like to just talk about that a little bit. And again, encourage each of you on both sides of the border to make your voice heard on the relationship and work together to try to solve some of the problems. You know, my sense is that there's a paradox at the border historically, that I talked to many people who grew up in the border area, as I'm sure many of you did. And, you know, I think back in the day, until not that many years ago, it was a fairly open border. People tell me that they, you know, used to go from one country into the other to play as children. And it was really no big deal to cross. And this is maybe, you know, in our lifetime, I mean, maybe 20, 30 years ago. I think around the same time as the border started to get more cumbersome to cross, it seems like our countries also, and this is kind of a paradox, we're engaging more. I think, you know, the signing of NAFTA, the original free trade agreement in the early 90s, really marked a revolution in US-Mexico relations, where for the first time we were kind of openly on the same team. And I think it is quite remarkable what has been achieved in the last 30 years in terms of the economic integration between our countries. But I think, sadly, the border has gotten a lot more complicated at the same time and cumbersome. And ultimately, so much of the relationship between the United States and Mexico really hinges on how we handle the border. I mean, the border is where a lot of the issues really, you know, the rubber hits the road on migration, on commerce, on security and drugs. And it is absolutely essential that we have a border that works for people on both sides. And I have to say, again, my message to all of you is please make your voice heard in Mexico City and in Washington, and as well in your state capitals, in Hermosillo and in Phoenix, for those of you who really live, you know, kind of more directly on the border. The opportunities are huge for both Arizona and Sonora. I think this is probably the corridor of our border that is the least developed for commerce currently. I mean, at least when you compare it to San Diego on the one side and Tijuana, and then some of the border areas in Texas like Laredo and Brownsville and Juarez. You know, those are just kind of more established commercial lanes. I think there's a lot of potential for increased commerce on the Arizona Sonora border. And I think it's all of you on this call who are going to be critical in making that a reality. But I have to say, you know, the past year, particularly with the pandemic, was a wake-up call, I think, in terms of some of the challenges that we face. As Mayor Hermosillo mentioned, you know, it's good news that the border restrictions are going to be lifted next month, but I think that is way overdue. I am shocked. I could not believe, frankly, that those border restrictions even lasted past last summer. I never thought that they would, but I have to tell you, I never heard from anybody the whole time I was ambassador until January of this year, you know, trying to lobby me to get these restrictions lifted. And, you know, I certainly am aware of the huge impact that these restrictions had on border communities. You know, I fortunately had the chance to visit before the pandemic, and I saw how, you know, there are families who some live on one side of the border, some live on the other. Children go to school on different sides of the border. People go shopping. So, you know, I understand that these are really integrated communities. And I have to say, I was surprised that there wasn't more pushback, especially after the first month or two, when it was clear that the virus, you know, could be kept under control to some extent, and that if you took certain basic precautions, it was possible to go on with life. I was surprised that there wasn't more pressure given the dislocations of life on both sides of the border. And you know, I never heard from the senators from Arizona, for instance, in terms of, you know, trying to get these restrictions lifted. And I would just encourage all of you who are there and you live this border experience to make sure to make your voices heard, again, at the state level and at the national level. I mean, you know, you have, you know, Senator Sinema is a very important senator. And you know, you have important contacts. And I think Washington and Mexico City are both very distant from the border. And I think, frankly, policymakers in Washington and Mexico City don't really have a good sense of what life is like on the border. And I think it's really incumbent for you to figure out, you know, who are the best contacts for you when something goes wrong at the border. You know, I know that sometimes I would get reports that, you know, CBP was, you know, changing some policy at the border, and all of a sudden we were hearing about 11-hour delays in traffic crossing the border. But, you know, I would hear about that kind of de casualidad, you know, just got by coincidence. And, you know, I think all of you should have channels where when that kind of a thing happens, you make sure that somebody knows about that who's in a position to do something about it. I mean, I think you have the right to try to insist on these things. I think you should have some kind of a mechanism for communicating with CBP. You know, get a meeting with the secretary of DHS and you know, demand that. And if they don't do that, you know, have your senators demand that then. You know, establish links not only with your consul general in Nogales and in Hermosillo, but also with the ambassador in Mexico City and in Washington, so that when things happen, you are not just having to react to events, but you are helping to shape events. You know, I feel very strongly that you have a very, very important voice. And I think there have been some things that have been done that are good. I think the border crossing card seems like a big improvement. But you know, I think you should demand the support of policymakers in Washington and Mexico City. I think it's great that you all are talking to each other, both within Arizona, within Sonora, talking among each other, and then across the border as well, because obviously these issues are not limited to one side of the border. So again, my message to you is really, please don't be shy. You know, try right now, before you have a crisis, to establish some lines of communication so that when something bad happens at the border, of any type, I mean, it can be an environmental problem, it can be a logistical problem at the border, you know, vaccines, pandemic, border crossings, that you have somebody that you can call who's in a position to do something about it. And again, I think on the Mexican side as well. I mean, you know, Governor Durazo is very familiar with the folks in power in Mexico City, and I think he can be a great advocate. And I think the border needs to have a stronger border voice in U.S.-Mexico relations. So I think there's no group that is better positioned to influence that voice than you all in the Ari-Son Megaregion. I commend you for getting together. I appreciate the invitation to address you today, and I wish you all the best. This is a great organization, and I think you can play a critical role in making the lives better for our people on both sides of the border. Many thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Ambassador Landau, for your service to both the United States and Mexico, and for the insightful message shared with the Arizona Megaregion Council today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now let us move on to our next agenda item. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Francisco Acuña Mendez, President of the Council for Sustainable Development of the State of Sonora. Mr. Acuña Mendez has a law degree from the Universidad Iberoamericana. He is also a member of New York State Bar Association. He holds a master's degree in international law from Georgetown University, and a second master's degree in public administration from Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And he was also the Secretary General of the Mexican National Intelligence Center. And since September 2021, he leads the newly created Council for Sustainable Development of the state of Sonora. Mr. Acuña, welcome, and you have the floor.
Sonora has a privileged location. Unique places such as El Pinacate and Gran Desierto de Altar Biosphere Reserve. 500 miles of coastline with the Gulf of California. We share more than 360 miles of border with the United States, and we have wealth of natural resources across 70,000 square miles. The new administration is committed to make of Sonora the ideal spot for business and leisure. Our administration is, and will always be, an example of transparency and integrity that will fight against corruption and will pay special attention on reinforcing the rule of law to ensure legal certainty. Altogether, we expect to create the best environment to achieve our primary objective, investment and security for development. The Governor, Alfonso Durazo, will personally lead the efforts. The objective is development and security. The Investment Development Council will act as a delivery unit to enhance investment by designing, promoting, and monitoring the execution of the State Development Plan. The Governor will watch over key projects and the shared benefits for local communities directly through this council. We want a new generation of socially oriented investors who can also become our ambassadors and promote investment. Fiscal soundness and healthy public finances will provide the right conditions for investment and development, particularly in the execution of the Northwest Gate Infrastructure Plan. We will exponentially increase the Guaymas seaport capacity to alleviate the saturation of Long Beach and strengthen ties with Asia and the United States. We will create a hassle-free corridor to facilitate the flow of trade between Guaymas and Arizona. We will integrate the Ciudad Obregón Airport to the logistics system, linking new sectors to the United States. We will expand 6 border crossings, and the Nogales Railroad crossing will be relocated to exponentially increase transit capacity. We will build the Guaymas-Chihuahua Highway to attract visitors from Texas and New Mexico, as well as 6 logistics bypasses and safe highways to detonate tourism at the Rocky Point area and the Gulf of California. We will launch the Sonora Energy Ecosystem to integrate the value chains of the electric industry, as well as rare mineral extraction, including one of the largest lithium reserves in the world. This is a step into the future and will put us in a position to accelerate electromobility and the installation of the largest solar park in the Americas, 2024. Finally, we will create special economic zones for indigenous communities without VAT and income tax. The investments will lead to economic inclusion through the creation of better jobs, social spillovers, and affirmative access to education and health services. Sonora will be safer, more inclusive, well-connected, and open for business.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Alexis Hermosillo, for the kind introduction. Want to greet all the panelists here who are interested in the region. Thank you very much, Ambassador Landau. I couldn't agree more with your message. You are a direct witness of some of the efforts going on in Mexico, and had the opportunity to work with you and some of your team. And I think you're going to be a great ally and a bridge in a lot of the efforts discussed today. So what I would like to share with you today is the Consejo de Desarrollo Sostenible, the Investment Development Sustainable Council that we just mentioned in the video. Basically, the reason for this commission, this bridge, this mechanism to be created is to basically facilitate trade and investment between Mexico and the US, and specifically between Sonora and Arizona and the southwest of the US. And basically what we are trying to do is to figure out quickly all the opportunity areas that we have to facilitate that investment, as well as all the red tape that we have that we could eliminate to facilitate investment. We want to take advantage of the special relationship, which is historic, that we have right now aligned in Sonora, which is the presidency and the governors and the municipalities all are from the same party, and they are all aligned in terms of a model of security and development. So you probably heard in the video the concept of security and development going together. So I'll take a minute of my 7 minute left or 6 minutes left in explaining the model of Dr. Durazo, Governor Durazo, regarding the relationship between security and development to bring more investment. So basically, in terms of security, which is one of the challenges that we have, the governor has launched a cabinet model that meets every morning, and is a security and development cabinet, which discusses both how the violence, impunity, violations to the rule of law are being addressed by the cabinet members, but at the same time, looking at how development, investment, trade flows are moving in the different regions of Sonora. So basically, we're working together indexes and metrics to basically showcase internally how development helps actually bring down violence, and vice versa, of course, how reductions of violence can bring and facilitate more interest in development in Sonora. We are very aggressively working with different groups. We follow Ambassador Landau suggestions. I think is very smart. For these kinds of investments, you really have to work in the region, but also beyond that. You have to work in the capitals, you have to work with the other players, the financial players who are beyond the region, and that's where also we are doing. Obviously, not forgetting that our natural partner in the States is Arizona and will continue to be Arizona, but you need to look at it from a more global perspective. In terms of the Consejo that we created, we invited the IDV, which is the most important development bank for Latin America. He's part of our board, also the World Bank, Arizona State University. I think Paola is here also in the call. Also, a couple of Harvard professors who are helping us also and create some of these metrics for investment and development. In terms of the government itself, the council is suggesting some best practices for the economic cabinet in terms of facilitating and reducing the time frames for developing, for opening companies, for following up on investments, etc. We're also working very closely with the security agencies of the state, both at the federal and state level, to accompany the investments, to basically go and go hand in hand with some of the investments, and not only the security, physical security of a project, which is obviously very important, but we need to address, and that's what we're working on the general perspective of security, including the courts, including the attorney generals, etc. So we're talking about an ecosystem of rule of law that needs to be improved, upgraded, and that's one of the focuses of the government is working around an historic budget and efforts to basically improve that. The state of Sonora used to have around 200 to 300 federal police officers at its best time. Now it has more than 2,000 folks from the National Guard, and that efforts continue to be improved. The state of Sonora should have between 5,000 and 6,000 state police officers, and it only has close to 1,000. So right now, in the first year, there's going to be 1,000 more state police, etc. So The efforts are being showcased in the budget in terms of security and development. And in the state of Sonora, we really are open to business, as the video says. We have a very aggressive strategy to really facilitate investments in the state, to make case studies. We would like you here, the panelists, and whoever is listening, we want to create successful case stories in the state of Sonora in all of the projects that were mentioned, but also in other projects that are not showcased in the video, but you or your allies or your clients might have in mind about investing in Sonora. The council will facilitate that. The council is coordinating with the cabinet in that regard, and is very closely working with the private sector in developing SPVs, developing models to facilitate the entrance of investment to the state. So we work very closely also with the local U.S. consul, Ken Roy, who has done a very good job in addressing some of these security concerns to us that we need to address as a priority. And therefore, I will just end this conversation in expressing the interest of the state of working with you, in coordinating with you, in listening the concerns that you have. We are working here with Marta to have a communication with everybody that wants to get in touch with us, and we're going to leave our contact here and available for all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Acuña Mendez. The Ari-Son Megaregion Council welcomes a message from Governor Alfonso Durazo, and we congratulate you on your recent appointment as President of the Council for Sustainable Development, and we look forward to continuing our binational collaboration. For our next segment, I would like to introduce Mr. Matthew Cormier, Director of Economic Affairs for the Western United States of Quebec General Delegation. Mr. Cormier works at the Quebec trade offices in Silicon Valley and Los Angeles, California. Director Cormier has a master's degree in international public administration and also studied Mandarin and politics from universities in China and Spain. He previously worked at the Quebec office in Shanghai, China, and was the executive director of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai. He is joined by Mr. Paul Thomas Lacroix, Director of Economic Affairs at the Quebec General Delegation in Mexico City. Director Lacroix has an MBA in international business. He has worked in market development covering the region of Nuevo León, Mexico, and has also served as trade attaché for the French Embassy in Canada. Both the directors will present on the activities of the government of Quebec in our mega region. Welcome, Mr. Cormier and Mr. Lacroix. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Hermosillo, for this kind of introduction. I'd like to pass my warm salutation to Ambassador Lando, Mr. Acuña Mendez, and a special thanks to Mr. Pryor and the Megaregion for inviting Quebec to present to all our delegates today. So I'm really happy to be with you. We'll be talking a little bit about Quebec and also the collaboration that we could possibly do in the near future with your both region. So maybe you notice my accent. Of course, we speak French in Quebec. We are based in east of Canada. I don't know if it's perfect. So Quebec is a fairly large territory with over 1.6 million square kilometers. 80% of our population speaks French, so this is why I have this accent. But we also really well integrated with the rest of Canada and of course North America. We have a GDP around $500 billion year after years. This is the equivalent of 20% of Canada total economy. Quebec has a strong presence all around the world. to support our activities and to do promotion. As you can see here on the map, we have over 33 offices in 18 countries. Right now, I'm based in Silicon Valley in California. We cover with our office around 13 states, among Arizona, of course. Our offices in the West are quite active because we have over 66 billions of bilateral trade between Quebec and United States every year. Quebec is the 10th largest trading partner of the state. So we have lots of companies established in the West, but also we also have a lot of US companies that are invested in Quebec. Our office opened in the 70s. We do typical government relations. So we take care of business export, foreign investment attraction to Quebec. We cover government relations, education, culture, and public affairs. Quebec is really well known for its expertise in hydropower. Most of our electricity comes from hydro dams created by a state-owned enterprise called Hydro-Québec. And with this investment, Quebec were able to diversify our industry and to invest in different type of technologies to be able to respond to our challenge world nowadays by reducing, for instance, the emission of gas. So we're really well developed right now a cluster of lithium-ion battery. This could be a really important area of collaboration between our states and region. As you know, we have a large territory, so lots of mines and sites are up there north of Quebec. So we decided to invest lots of millions of dollars into developing a cluster over 150 companies that generate nearly $2 billion of sales throughout every year in development of batteries. So really open to discuss this potential collaboration by developing new technologies around the lithium-ion battery expertise. And one of them is, of course, to help the transportation. So we have established a strong target in Quebec by 2030 to have over 1.5 million of electric vehicles sold in Quebec. So this gives us a lots of opportunity by diversifying our industry. We invested, for instance, $100 million in a company called Lion Electric, who specialize into electrical bus, electrical truck, and we're already selling a lot of those technologies throughout the states. Another industry where Quebec is quite strong and where we could have lots of good collaboration is everything related to video game and VFX. Quebec is quite innovative and creative when it comes to video games. We're the 5th largest center in the world, and we have over 200 companies that operate in that field. Maybe some of you knows greatest hits like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty. So we were able to attract a lot of investment in that field in Quebec. Same with the cinema and VFX. Montreal is also really well known for specialized companies that does visual effects. We encounter for 32% of the Canadian production in animation. And we have, since the past 5 years, produced over 200 shooting in Montreal. So again, lots of potential of collaboration in that area. We also have a lot of things going on with Arizona, mostly in optic photonics. We have good relation with Tucson and University of Arizona, with one of our top universities in Quebec called University Sherbrooke. We developed a startup and accelerator program, and I'm sure we're going to be able to have more and more collaboration in the near future to be able to have a better world for each other. So welcome you everyone to visit Quebec, and I hope to to be able to visit both of your region really soon. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, Mathieu, for this great first part and for the introduction. I'm Paul Thomas Lacroix, Director of Economic Affairs at the Quebec General Delegation in Mexico. I'm really glad to be here. Hello to everyone. And thank you, Mayor Hermosillo, for the introduction. Thank you to our partner, as Mathieu mentioned, Ari-Son Megaregion Council for this great invitation and this great event. So let's get to it. The Quebec General Delegation in Mexico, who are we? The Quebec General Delegation in Mexico was inaugurated in 1980, and we celebrated our 40th anniversary last year in 2020. Out of the 33 Quebec's representation in the world, our Quebec office in Mexico is actually the third largest in the world. And we have 23 people working full-time on promoting Quebec's interests. In Mexico, we have a lot of interest. We have economic interest, cultural, public affairs, education, and immigration as well. Now, this slide is to show you the importance of the commercial relations between Quebec and Mexico. Mexico is Quebec's fourth most important business partner in the world. And Mexico is actually the first in Latin America for Quebec. Since 1995, Quebec and Mexico commercial trade relations have increased tremendously, thanks to NAFTA and now with USMCA, obviously. But in 1995, the commercial trades were about 1 billion. And nowadays it's about, as you see on the graph, it's up to $7 billion. So this shows you the importance and most importantly, the growth that we had between Quebec and Mexico. Now, talking about imports and exports, this is a little snapshot of the profiles of the main exports that we have in Quebec. You'll notice that they are made up traditional productions such as paper manufacturing, iron production, and hydroelectricity, power generation, as Mathieu mentioned, or also high value-added products, especially in the aerospace sector. For example, Quebec's aerospace industry is well known for Bombardier, but you see also that CAE is the world leading manufacturer of flight simulator on that graph. So this shows you a little bit of our main sectors in terms of export. Now to zoom in, speaking of aerospace, to zoom in a little bit on that sector, Montreal, a great city that some of you probably know, Montreal is the third largest aerospace center in the world, alongside obviously Seattle and Toulouse in France. And Quebec's aerospace industry is without a doubt one of the best structured industry in our economy. Obviously, thanks to the presence of several world leaders such as Bombardier, Pratt & Whitney Canada, Bell Helicopter, we also have a highly skilled workforce and a world-class equipment manufacturers. Quebec is certainly at the top of the list, the top of the industry list. The Quebec aerospace industry groups more than 200 companies, creates nearly 60,000 jobs, and it actually contributes to more than 50% of the whole Canadian production in that whole sector. Now, talking about the mine industry, this is a great industry in Quebec, especially with relation with Sonora. The mining industry is an economic engine in all regions in Canada, but the province of Quebec is actually the leader in the country in that sector in terms of the value of its mining activities. We have close to 4,000 companies only in the Quebec province supporting mining companies in terms of exploration and production, creates 15,000 direct jobs, And to show you the growth that sector had in Quebec from 2014 to 2018, jobs grew by about 5%, and its GDP's contribution grew from 7 to 9 billion which is more than 15% contribution, a growth actually. So this is a great sector in relation with Sonora, and I'll show you a little bit later concrete examples that we have in that specific sector. Now, obviously, I cannot talk about the automotive industry, which is a sector for future collaborations with Mexico as a whole, but with Sonora as well. Quebec has more than 115 solid and large companies active in the industry. It creates 6,500 jobs, generates annual sales approximately of 2 billion. And we have lots of companies, also innovative companies, getting involved into the electric vehicle sector, as Mathieu also mentioned. And we hope to develop that sector in collaboration with the state of Sonora and Mexico in general. Now, let's talk 1 minute about Quebec and Sonora's relations. Basically, Sonora is a strategic state for Quebec. To stick to the fact and to show you Quebec's engagement into that Mexican state, well, basically in 2018 and 2019, just before the pandemic hit, we organized 3 commercial missions, 1 in aerospace and 2 in the mines industry, which gathered about 15 Quebec companies. And we organized B2B meetings, we organized visits also of Sonora companies. There was also many meetings that took place with the Secretary of Economic Development, Undersecretary of Mines, Pro Sonora, and Impulsor organization. We also had the visit in Montreal with Mr. Jorge Luis Morena de Villa, responsible at Impulsor. And we had the chance to have our general delegate in Mexico, Madame Stephanie Elar Gomez, to visit the city of Hermosillo, and she met with Governor Madame Claudia Pavlovich and various government and university secretaries. Now, this is the last slide, and this is just to show you what we can do, what we actually did already, what we can do in the future. So this is a picture of Meg's lab office that was inaugurated in February 5th, 2020. Meg Lab is a Quebec-based company that's present, that is active in over 15 countries, providing technological solutions in the mine industry especially. And I always love to see pictures like this with Mexican and Quebec partners smiling and cutting the ribbon with great collaboration. So this is a symbolic image, and I hope we have many more of these pictures down the road. So thank you very much.
Thank you, directors, for the information you shared with us today. Working with our North American trade partners is key to the mega region's success, and our cities, towns, and native nations are very excited to be listening to your message and look forward to continuing to collaborate with the government of Quebec. So thank you so much again for all of your information. Now we will transition to the presentation on the binational freight corridor study and the safety logistical corridor. I would like to introduce Mark Sanders, Director of International Affairs of the Arizona Department of Transportation. Director Sanders is a graduate of Northern Arizona University and the Universidad de Granada in Spain. His office strives to ensure a strong binational relationship between Arizona and Sonora. Mr. Sanders also serves as the designated representative of the Arizona Department of Transportation at the Maricopa Association of Governments Economic Development Committee. Joining Mr. Sanders is Mr. Luis Ramirez, President of Ramirez Advisors International, a highly specialized firm dedicated to creating innovative solutions for cross-border business between Arizona, Mexico, and Canada. Also joining them is Mr. Gerardo Vázquez Falcón, President of Index Sonora, a leading association that promotes the competitiveness of the maquiladora and export manufacturing companies in Sonora. Thank you for joining us, and you all have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Hermosillo, Ambassador Landau, Senator Acuna, and Mr. Pryor. Thank you for the introductions, and we're looking forward to present to you. I also want to thank, before we get started, our partners that make international initiatives possible, and that is SIDUR, Secretaría de Infraestructura y Desarrollo Urbano en Sonora, as well as INDEX, also Consul General Laura Biederbach's office in Nogales, as well as Juan Siscomani and the Arizona Mexico Commission. And I also want to make a special thanks to Mr. Glenn Williamson, the Honorary Consul of Canada. Thank you very much. Before I start with this program, I want to describe what happened here. Director Halakowski, John Halakowski for ADOT, made a trip to Mexico City to discuss transportation and new economic opportunities. During the presentations, he saw that no one mentioned what we had, which was an incredible corridor, the MX-15 from Mexico City all the way to Nogales. Needless to say, he came back to Arizona and said, we need to do something to bring more business into our state. We have an incredible border, an incredible relationship with Mexico, so we get started. So that's how this all got started a couple of years ago. So we analyzed the corridor's economical and different kind of regions, compared the corridor to Juarez El Paso, identified production clusters as well as key supply chains, also produced a 15-year forecast plan, and identified and analyzed improvement strategies to quantify the impacts. We found this, our main supply chains, fresh produce, mining, auto industry, aerospace, and electronics. Of course, Sonora and Sinaloa are the main markets for this corridor. Needless to say, our top importation is fresh produce. 70% of our supply chain is fresh produce. We also saw that there's a large amount of paper, plastics, and wood related to this industry simply because of the pallets that they travel on. We didn't really think about that much. It's all money northbound. Electronics and aerospace is the second largest by volume. Mining products is the third highest. However, it is the most growing commodity right now that we are working with in this region. And as the gentleman from Canada explained, it's a very big market for us. Auto industry is also big. It's more balanced, but as some of you might know, the plant in Hermosillo of Ford is actually closed right now due to supply chain issues, which hurts the economy greatly. This is interesting right here. We did a comparison of travel times between Culiacan to Nogales and to Reynosa area. As you can see here, the travel to Nogales is 15 hours compared to 24 hours to Reynosa. You also have to consider that in Arizona, you're getting processed in under 30 minutes, where it can take 4+ hours in Texas. We call that a no-brainer in our industry, but we'll see how it happens. Also, the costs to Nogales are much lower than the cost to Reynosa with shipping containers. These costs are going up on a daily basis, as we all know. We want to give kudos to our Mexican partners. They really stepped up, invested $1.8 billion from Mexico City on the MX-15 to our border. The investment covers roughly 2,200 kilometers, of which 800 are from Sonora to the region. There's roughly 25 kilometers left for this new investment. And with that said, I want to hand it over to my colleague, Luis Ramirez, to discuss the infrastructure needs.
Mark, thank you so much. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Before I get started on the infrastructure issues, I wanted to let everybody know that the U.S. Department of Transportation, literally, I think in the last 36 hours, released the latest information on border crossing volumes, number of people, cars, pedestrians, trucks that are crossing the border. And so we now have the data from January of this year through August, through the end of August. And the story for the Arizona Sonora region is positive. It is, of course, as the ambassador and others have indicated, the border crossing restrictions have severely impacted the flow of people between both countries and also with Canada. But we're happy to see that from when we compare January through August of 2021 with the same period of 2020, personal vehicles or cars are up to 18.7%, from 3.8 million to 4.5 million. For total people, that's people, pedestrians, people in cars, buses, we see an increase of 12.6% for those 8 months when compared to 2020. But more importantly, from a trade perspective, we're seeing the truck traffic between Arizona and Mexico increasing dramatically. We've seen a 13.3% increase in truck traffic. May not sound like much, but that is from 289,000 trucks in that same period in 2020 to now 328,000. That's a difference of 38,500 trucks more over those 8 months. And we are really hopeful that by the end of 2021, we will set a new record of trucks crossing the Arizona-Mexico border. And when more trucks are crossing, that means more products are coming across. That means trade is flowing. That means jobs are being created. That means investments are being made. So we remain very hopeful for the continued and prompt recovery of the Megaregion, greatly benefit the people the residents of the Arizona Sonora region. So very happy to discuss that. Now let me take the last 2 or 3 minutes to talk about, we're talking about millions of people, hundreds of thousands of trucks. They have to get through somehow. This is the image that you have before you as the San Luis Juan port of entry. In fiscal year 20, we secured $152.4 million to help modernize that facility. Continues to be amongst the ports of entry, has some of the longest wait times for people to cross. We're now hopeful and expecting as much as $150 million to be included in the fiscal year 2022 budget to pay for the full build out of this new port of entry. And we're eager to continue our work with Mexico on the binational coordination of what we're investing on the US side, the reciprocal investments that are required on the Mexican side as well. Douglas, we have what we call the Douglas two-port solution. And actually I didn't catch this in time. The number that is provided there, 325 million, should be 447 million. That's what it's going to take to build a brand new port of entry 5 miles to the west of the existing port in Douglas, to a facility where the city of Douglas is in the process of donating 80 acres of land to the federal government to build a state-of-the-art facility to process cargo. That would allow customs to take all the commercial traffic out of the heavily congested downtown area and dedicate the existing port to non-commercial traffic. It's cars, buses, pedestrians, even bicycles. So therefore you would have, a landlocked facility, but then, the space that is currently used for trucks be then used for processing non-commercial traffic. Very excited to see that. $447 million is part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which we hope will get voted on before the end of this year. Even some rumors that it could be in the next week or 2 weeks. We're just keeping our fingers crossed that this gets done and asking Congress to move forward with this project as well. This is a major challenge for Douglas today. This is a type of investment that is required to offer Douglas and Agua Prieta, that entire region of the Arizona Sonora corridor, the type of investment that is required for continued growth and sustainability. And then finally, in terms of infrastructure issues, we have, as you know, hopefully most of you have used it, the Mariposa port of entry in Nogales has been modernized, more than $250 million invested, but we still have the DeConcini port in the downtown area, which continues to be, just a major headache from a congestion perspective. We see some of the challenges when we have the monsoons and the flooding that occurs. You also see on the image on the left side, the building literally sits right on top of the international boundary. There is no opportunity for staging, deployment of technology and other programs to ensure the safety of the traveling public as they're crossing through the port of entry. And before I transition over to Mark, I want to stress that all these initiatives from our ports of entry and the major investments that we're hoping to have in infrastructure has been a fully coordinated message with Governor Ducey, the entire congressional delegation, both in the Senate and the House. We've, on very few issues have we been able to get all 11 members of the Arizona delegation to Congress so united. And we have unanimous, the 9 members of the House, our 2 senators, supporting these initiatives. And we thank them for making sure that these projects receive the national attention that they so require. And with that, Mark, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Luis. Skip this one, please. So beyond infrastructure, we realized that there was other problems after we saw the study, and that was the relationships with our Mexican truck driving industry in Mexico. There was a lack of trust between truck drivers and the officials on the border, our officers, our inspection facilities. So with that said, what we did with the director's leadership and Governor Ducey, we started what's called the Border Liaison Unit. This unit is comprised of 5 officers from our border who literally cross into Mexico, interact with Mexican truck drivers, teaching them how to inspect their vehicles. We do a 2-day course called the International Border Inspection Qualification, which is called IBIC. This course assures that these drivers will come across to the border with almost no violations and out of service violations are the worst things for the industry because they tie your truck down, the merchandise could be gone, and it's going to cost you thousands of dollars. During the pandemic, there was still a great need to help out the Mexican industry. So we had literally 43 virtual workshops completed by April 2020 with 912 participants. We are waiting to return to Mexico to continue our courses with the industry. A big plus that we worked on this summer was trying to minimize the contact between the trucking industry and our officers on the border. We started what's called the cashless touchless permitting system. With this system, the driving industry can purchase all their permits online. By the time they get to the border, they show their paperwork and they're on their way. Besides being a health issue, we saw that instead of taking 15 to 30 minutes to purchase permits, it's now taking them 15 to 30 seconds. In the transportation industry, that's gold. This is our most innovative communication tool and program that we run right now. It's called the WhatsApp program. I think you're all familiar with this, the largest international text tool in the world. What we do is anyone that passes our IBEC course signs up for this WhatsApp. They can text and consult with our border liaison unit officers on the border if they have any doubts of what's going to happen with their truck. They take a picture of it. If they're worried it's going to get a violation out of service, we answer them on the spot and tell them if they don't fix it, they can put out of service or they're good to go. Out of these 1,576 inquiries, 80% of them avoided out of service violations. Action items to finish up with, work with our border master plan, which was just recently awarded. We're very excited about that. Continue to work with our Sonoran counterparts to what we, in our opinion, is the best relationship on the border in the United States, is between Sonora and Arizona by far. And working with our federal counterparts to help out with the Deacon City Port of Entry. And with that, I thank all of you and thank you for the opportunity. And I'll hand it over to my colleague, Gerardo Vázquez from Sonora.
Muchas gracias, Mayor Alexis Hermosillo. Thank you very much for joining us and invite us. And thank you very much for my colleagues. Voy a hablar en español y queremos comentar la siguiente página, por favor. Nosotros somos la parte que manufactura, ensambla y exporta los productos hechos en Sonora a diferentes partes del mundo, desde Guaymas, Hermosillo, Nogales y diferentes otras ciudades que nos permiten hacer trading. Actualmente nosotros estamos exportando de Sonora a los Estados Unidos 17,000 millones de dólares, son 17 billion US dollars yearly en productos. Por otro lado, next page. Hemos visto que tenemos algunos aspectos en los cuales se reducen los tiempos, se incrementan los costos, se incrementan los tiempos, se incrementan los costos y necesitamos, por otro lado, asegurar la parte de security y la parte de safety. Desde el punto de vista, nosotros estamos buscando desarrollar y hemos venido trabajando muy de la mano con el Arizona Department of Transportation, con Mark Sanders, para poder desarrollar un proyecto de un corredor logístico comercial seguro, de tal manera que podamos fortalecer la parte de nuestro comercio internacional, porque adicionalmente estamos trayendo vía Long Beach inbound, estamos trayendo cerca de 12,000 millones de dólares a Sonora. Y por otro lado, nos están llegando desde el puerto de Manzanillo, Colima, que está, ahora sí que también muy lejos de nuestro puerto, nos está llegando mercancía que llega aquí a Sonora y aquí ensamblamos. En fin, nosotros buscamos tener un desarrollo económico que nos permita fortalecer mediante las estrategias de ally sharing que podamos desarrollar ahora con lo que fuimos expuestos por la pandemia y poder mejorar las condiciones de seguridad de nuestro transporte, previniendo que haya contaminación de las cargas, previniendo que haya tráfico a través de nuestras cadenas de suministro y de transporte. Entonces, el corredor logístico seguro nos ayudaría a ser mucho más competitivos, nos incrementaría la posibilidad de generar mayor comercio entre ambos países, sea que llegue de Long Beach o que llegue de Manzanillo. Consideramos que las fortalezas de ambas regiones nos permitirían incrementar por mucho en lo que serían estos 17,000 billion US dollars. Actualmente otras fronteras, por ejemplo, Baja California con California, ellos están teniendo un comercio cercano a los 53 billones de dólares. El comercio que se tiene entre Chihuahua y Texas está cercano también a los 57 billion dollars, 57 billones de dólares. Y nosotros solamente estamos teniendo 17 billones porque no estamos teniendo una facilitación en las aduanas, en los tránsitos y en las rutas que nos permitirían ser muchísimo más competitivos. Digamos, comparado contra Chihuahua, ellos no tienen costa y nosotros tenemos acceso al Pacífico y es un puerto que le puede agregar valor tanto a Arizona como a una parte de California, de Nevada y una parte de Texas. Consideramos que esto es una gran ventaja y que nos permitiría fortalecer el comercio y la actividad económica en grado superlativo, considerando estos aspectos. Obviamente tiene que ser fortalecido con seguridad, con tecnología, con seguridad patrimonial y algo muy importante, a través de un corredor logístico donde todas las autoridades, tanto desde el punto de vista México, estatales y federales, y desde el punto de vista USA, pues CBP y el Estado. La siguiente, por favor. Ups, falta otra, una anterior. Bueno, este roadmap, arranca con un risk analysis, un feasibility report de las partes interesadas. Ese análisis de riesgo lo remitiríamos para su revisión y aprobación a la Sedena, a la Guardia Nacional y a la Aduana de México. Por otro lado, también al CBP y a la Arizona Department of Transportation para su revisión y valoración. Posteriormente, tendríamos que tener una aprobación y aceptación tanto de los gobiernos de México y de Estados Unidos. Un segundo. Y en su caso, tener las mejoras a los procedimientos y el aseguramiento respectivo. La siguiente página, por favor. En la parte 2 del roadmap tendríamos un proyecto piloto donde se arranque del puerto de Guaymas y de Hermosillo, Sonora, con dirección a Nogales, Arizona. Se haría un análisis del caso, se revisaría, se aprobaría o se declinaría para que veamos si ganamos algún tipo de experiencia y que no tomemos ningún riesgo. Si es aprobado, empezamos con la operación del corredor logístico seguro y tener una revisión anual de los casos y de las mejoras que podamos hacerle. En términos generales, Estados Unidos y México, Arizona y Sonora nos une como amigos, como familias, como vecinos y también como socios comerciales. Consideramos que esto es fundamental para que nos ayude a la región Arizona Sonora a poder mejorar de gran manera nuestro desarrollo económico. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Director Sanders and Presidents Vasquez and Ramirez, for your very insightful presentation. I applaud this effective coordination and the plans to improve the infrastructure in the megaregion. These efforts are helpful in reducing the costs related to long wait times of our cross-border trade. So thank you so much for your presentation. According to the University of Arizona, total U.S. trade between Arizona and Mexico through our shared ports of entries reached $8 billion total goods in the second quarter of this year, up 49% from 2020. By developing projects like these, our megaregion can set itself apart from the competitor destinations for foreign direct investments. And I want to repeat that number again. It was $8 billion. That was up from 2020. On the topic of foreign direct investments, I would like to introduce Mr. Matthew Earl Jones, Director of Film and Digital Media of the Arizona Commerce Authority. Director Jones has over 30 years production experience in the Japanese, New York, Los Angeles, and Phoenix markets. He has produced national and international television commercials, including one starring Queen Latifah, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Ray Charles. He will be presenting the project called the 300-Mile Zone, a collaborative effort between the governments of Arizona and Sonora to grow the film and media production in the megaregion. Welcome, Director Jones. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much.
First, a new HBO Max series is preparing to film in the Old Pueblo. We now know the name of the show and the big Hollywood names attached to the project. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Pat Paris.
And I'm Heidi Alaga. The rumors have been circulating for months about an HBO Max series being filmed right here in Tucson.
Yeah, there have even been calls for extras for a pilot being shot in the Old Pueblo. Now, KGUN 9 has learned what the series is and the major economic impact it could have on the region.
I think it's incredible. After 25 years of inactivity.
Veteran Tucson filmmaker Mark Headley is reacting to a new HBO Max series set to be filmed in the Old Pueblo following more than a 2-decade drought of Hollywood productions. Multiple sources in the Tucson film industry have confirmed to KGUN 9 the HBO Max series is called Duster. According to Variety, Duster is set in the 1970s Southwest and explores the life of a getaway driver for a growing crime syndicate. The HBO Max series is co-written by J.J. Abrams and reunites Abrams with former Law star Josh Holloway. Holloway will play the lead in Duster. It begins production later this month, and with it comes a big boost to the Tucson film industry.
It's work for everybody. You know, there's over 100 different jobs in a film production that comes here, and a lot of people are getting hired. And as I said, I don't know what the exact budget of Duster is, the film coming from HBO Warner Brothers, but it's huge.
To entice the HBO Max series Duster to film in Tucson, the state has awarded a portion of a $9.4 million Visit Arizona Initiative partnership grant to the production company. The state says the project is estimated to have a $65 million economic impact in the first year of a potential multi-year production. They say the exposure the series brings to Tucson can provide a significant tourism boom, like Breaking Bad did for New Mexico and Yellowstone is now doing for Montana.
People are going to want to see where this series is shot. So people will be coming here and spending money.
And Mark Headley says he's pleased to finally see the state of Arizona, as well as Rio Nuevo here in Tucson, kick in money to attract productions helping to revitalize the film industry here in Tucson. First, a new HBO Max series.
Thank you very much, Mayor. First, I should say my deep affection for Sonora goes back 14 years ago when I produced a commercial for Sandy Beach Resorts in Puerto Penasco, and it's kind of gone full circle. I now own property there, and I'm very proud of my permanent residence card. So I've been a fan for many years. The 300-mile zone, and that's a play on the term 30-mile zone, better known as TMZ, which is the studio zone in Hollywood. Back in 2017, at the Governor's Conference of Tourism, I had the pleasure of meeting with Gaston Pavlovich, who pointed out that if we put our two states together, there was no region, no location we could not provide. Subsequent to that, I met with the Sonoran delegation at the League of Cities and Towns and proposed that we would start promoting their locations, primarily the beaches in the Sea of Cortez, on the Arizona State website. The reason we would do this is that, number one, what's good for our neighbors is good for us. But a lot of people, a lot of the studios are making huge investments into Mexico. Netflix announced recently a $300 million investment. Most of those are shot down off the coast of Mexico City or Guadalajara because of the infrastructure that's there. Under this agreement, the beaches in Sonora, which have not really been seen since Jacques Cousteau, could be supported by the infrastructure from Phoenix and Tucson. We then started promoting the locations. We started listing the Sonoran film offices on the Arizona website. And then we signed an agreement at the 60th anniversary of the Arizona-Mexico Commission to work together in 2019. Next slide, please. So again, this is a historic partnership for the film industry. I can't think of any other place in the world where you have two neighboring states working together for a common good. And the area stretches from the northern boundary of Tucson down to Guaymas, San Carlos area in Mexico. Next slide, please. The response to the ability to be able to shoot beach locations that have not been shot out since the beach movies of the 50s, referring to Malibu, Venice, and Santa Monica, but to be in some of the most pristine beaches, areas in the world, and yet be close to Hollywood and be able to pull equipment and crew from the American side of the border has been very well received by all the studios and the networks that I've spoken to. Next slide, please. Again, this is an opportunity for both states. The 300-mile zone, which pretty much corresponds to the Arizona Megaregion, would allow the Sonoran side to benefit from productions coming in terms of location fees, hotels, car rentals, restaurants, and local hires. The Arizona side benefits from being able to export skilled labor and equipment. Already one of our largest vendors in Southern Arizona, Monsoon Production, has stated that in the last 2 years, over 38% of their business came from cross-border productions. Next slide, please. Again, we've talked in general terms about the industry response. I would be remiss if I didn't put this quote up from Gaston Pavlovich. For those of you who don't know, he produced The Irishman, a $200 million project for Netflix, for Scorsese. Prior to that, he did the movie Silence. So he is a major player on both sides of the border. And he's recently said to me that he has a new script that is ready to go into production in the 300-mile zone or the mega region. Next slide. So how can you be a part? We're asking towns, municipalities, crew, talent, locations, people with services on both sides of the border to go to our website, which is gofilmaz.com, and register your services, your talent, your crew, your locations with the Arizona Film Office. There's absolutely no cost to register. We do not take a commission, but our goal is to build a binational database and be able to offer this unique solution to Hollywood. Next slide, please. I would like to take a minute more of my 3 minutes remaining. I wanted to give the mayor ample time for closing remarks to introduce my partner, the Arizona Film Office, Andrew Balan. Andrew, in addition to graduating summa cum laude from ASU in film production, which means he's incredibly intelligent, and also being well-versed in the new technologies. His first language is Spanish, though I think in many times he speaks English better than I do. But he will be working with me hand in hand to make up for my lack of ability to speak Spanish, though estoy aprendiendo español. So with that, thank you very much. Andrew, if you'd like to, we have a little over 2 minutes remaining. I wanted to go through this very quickly to give you a chance to speak. So please say a few words.
Perfect. Hola a todos. My name is Andrew Bayon, and I am the project coordinator and film associate here at Arizona Film and Digital Media. And I would like to thank everyone that's part of the Megaregion Ari-Son for inviting us today and allowing us to speak with you all. And it's a very exciting time what we have here brewing with the film industry and getting everyone involved from both parties to be a part of something amazing, and that we are open to film anything you need.
Andrew's very modest. He's far more than a project coordinator. I think his modesty attests to his character. He's been a friend of the family for many years, and very grateful that we've been able to keep him here at the Commerce Authority. My role will switch now that our infrastructure is somewhat built, from answering the phone on incoming calls, which have been smaller projects, to reaching out to the studios and networks, presenting the 300-mile zone as the ultimate filming destination, from major cities to snow-capped mountains to deserts to the most pristine beaches in the world, according to Jacques Cousteau. There's no location that doesn't exist, along with film-friendly film offices, very well established crew and talent. So we see this as a win-win for both states. We encourage everyone who is a part of this to please be registered. Please reach out to me or to Andrew. Starting after they wrap the show in the middle of November, I will be putting on my salesman hat and presenting our 300-mile zone to Hollywood. So thank you very much for your time, and hope that we see many more productions in the mega region. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you for the interesting information shared with us today, Mr. Jones. I think it's a great example on how our region can find innovative ways to attract investment and share our binational landscape with the world. So thank you for
Mayor.
that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Now I have the honor of introducing the Honorable Glenn Williamson, Chairman of Epcor Water USA, the largest private water utility in Arizona, a subsidiary of Epcor Utilities, headquartered in Edmonton, Alberta. Mr. Williamson is also the Honorary Consul of Canada in Arizona and the founder and CEO of the Canada-Arizona Business Council, a private sector group sanctioned by the Canadian government and the state of Arizona to work on increasing bilateral trade and foreign direct investment. Mr. Williamson, you have the floor.
Mayor, thank you very, very much. It is always such a pleasure to listen to such astute and intelligent people talking about the Arizona Sonora relationship. I would like to put that into perspective in one of the comments that the ambassador said in the very beginning, where he started talking about USMCA and what has gone on. I think while we look at the three countries of Mexico, Canada, and the United States, it's a little disappointing, some of the politics that go back and forth. But I would like to point out that what you have done with Arizona and Sonora is unbelievable. The years and years and years of work of pulling these two together has created what I consider to be one of the best practices of geography working really well. Canada, Arizona, and Sonora, Mexico. This is what I think is the best practices and what all three countries should be looking for. I guarantee you this is what Chinese intelligence officers are watching very closely. If we get this right, with all the things that Luis Ramirez and everything that Halakowski has done and all the mayors that have put their time and effort into this, it is an unbelievable opportunity. This is one of the reasons there's 500 Canadian companies operating here. This is one of the reasons why Canada is the largest foreign direct investor here. Canada as a country, Quebec, moi je parle français aussi pour les 2 personnes qui parlent français de Quebec. I am from Montreal as well. And Mr. Earl Jones, I think Quebec is on your list, I'm sure, for things to talk about with film, as I'm sure is Vancouver and British Columbia.
But of course.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's up there. So I look at this and I say, what are we doing here that is so unique? Why would EPCOR, my company, invest $1 billion+ in the state of Arizona? Why would the second largest private water utility and the third largest private water utility be here? These are all Canadian companies that see the opportunities here. When I take a look at why the mining industry is so robust and why the bulk of the mines in Sonora and in Arizona trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange and look to that capital markets group for so much of their fiscal moving forward. I think these are very, very important things to look at. Just like the Quebec lads were talking about, look at Bombardier. Bombardier is in Querétaro. It's also here in Tucson with a 1 million square foot plant with a headquarters in Montreal. The aviation industry sees this lineage. They watch it go back and forth. The open corridors that all of you have worked so hard on the borders. This is all going to pay off enormously. And what we have watched is geography historically was not the big issue until the pandemic happened. Now the pandemic has made geography important. Now we have oceans between us. We have 100 ships lying in wait to get in, and the thin line of supply chain is exposed. Mexico is the secret answer to this, always has been, but now we're seeing more and more of it. And I give great credit again to the mayors, to the governors of Mexico's Sonora state and Arizona for all the work you have done. Canadians are paying attention. Canadian government is paying attention. The provinces are paying attention. In French, we say chapeau. Today was a very strong learning lesson for many people that will watch this afterwards. Mayor, thank you very much for allowing me to give my 2 cents on this. I just want to say thank you to all of you for all the hard work that you have all done, and it is going to pay off well into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williamson. The presence of dignitaries such as yourself, Ambassador Landau, and the representatives from Quebec and the state of Sonora and Arizona can only demonstrate the relevance of continuing to work together as a North American front to grow globally. So thank you so much for all of your presence today for this convening. We will now conclude the meeting, and on behalf of the Ari-Son Megaregion Council, we thank all the distinguished participants today. We encourage everyone that joins to contact Elsa Belgin at evmag.gov to receive information about our upcoming binational events. Do not forget to answer our survey displayed at the chat section and follow us on the social media shown on your screen. Thank you and enjoy your weekend.